I was happening, y'all. It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and Adam Peters has made his first real signing since becoming our official GM of the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are signing three-time Pro Bowl tight end Zach Ertz to a one-year, $5 million deal. And you know it's not a Rico of RicoScores video if we don't do as deep of a dive into this situation as we can. Does this stop us from taking a tight end potentially within like the first 2 or 3 rounds of the draft? Does this even stop us from signing another tight end in free agency like a Noah Fant? Is this a great signing? Is this like a high reward, low risk type of signing? How should we view this? And of course, by the end of the video, I also want to give my grade on the signing. I'm gonna try to give grades for every signing that we make throughout this entire free agency period, because be on the lookout. It looks like we're probably going to make a lot of them, but we're going to also talk about that because the Commanders are reportedly going to be active spenders. But does that necessarily mean that we're going to make a lot of top free agency signings, like some headliners at respective position groups, or are we just simply going to sign a lot of people to come in and be decent starters slash depth pieces, guys that we're taking risk on with cheap contracts, or you can argue smart contracts? So of course we're going to do a full dive into this whole Zach Ertz situation, what connections he has with the Commanders already. Even outside of Cliff Kingsbury, he's already connected with a couple of other people here as well. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all the content. Again, I'm keeping y'all updated on every little thing that the Commanders do. Your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. I just came out with my trade back mock draft just for the fun of it. Actually ended up getting a lot of elite players from that. Make sure you go check that out. That came out earlier this morning. Also be on the lookout for a lot more free agency videos like our top needs. I'm working on the video for that. Some of my favorite free agents at every position of need that we have, all types of stuff, man. So stay tuned for all of that. Without further ado, let's go and get to this video right now. Let's get it. All right, so Adam Peters has officially made his first real signing, and I emphasize real because, again, like I've already talked about before, we already signed Kazmeir Allen and Mason Brooks off of the 2023 Commanders practice squad like a week ago, and that shows you how much they prioritize those guys, because those are like the first signings. That's the first move that Adam Peters ever made. Like, even before we decided to cut Charles Leno, Logan Thomas, and Nick Gates, that was the very first move. So expect big things out of those guys. Mason Brooks is probably going to compete somewhere for an interior offensive line spot. I'm not projecting him to start, but he's going to be there in the competition. And then Kazmeir Allen, maybe they see something in him from last year's training camp from the Commanders. Maybe they watch the tape. Maybe they talk to some of the special teams coaches from that year, like Nate Caxer and things like that, and was like, man, that guy has some potential there as like a punt returner for us, a starting punt returner, starting kick returner, and maybe even as like a depth piece at receiver, because we need a lot of receivers. So that was the first like kind of signing, but it wasn't that major. And now we've officially made the first real signing, especially like of an outside free agent from a different team. Tom Pelissero tweeted, three-time Pro Bowl tight end Zach Ertz is signing with the Washington Commanders on a one-year deal worth up to $5 million per source. It's a reunion for Ertz and Cliff Kingsbury, who got him a ton of targets in Arizona on a deal negotiated by agent and tight end guru Steve Carrick of Wasserman NFL. Some of those extra details at the end aren't necessarily that important, but if you wanted to know that information, I just also wanted to include that while I was going ahead and reading the entire tweet. But the Washington Commanders have signed Zach Ertz, who has been a burgundy and gold killer for a while, man. Boy, we were going through it when he was back there with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then the Eagles had the nerve to go and get Dallas Goedert as well, so we was just struggling to deal with both of them at one point in time. If anybody knows how good Zach Ertz can be when he's on top of his game, it's us, boy. Nightmares, man. But we all know that a veteran tight end that can get open is a young quarterback's best friend. So whether it's Sam Howell or we take quarterback number 2 overall or whoever, this Zach Ertz signing does help. And for those of y'all who are wondering as well, Yes, the legal tampering period technically starts on March 11th. The league year starts technically March 13th, which is when free agency technically starts. But we are able to go ahead and sign a guy like Zach Ertz because he was not currently on a team already by the time the 2023 season ended. He was already a free agent before the 2023 season concluded. So that's why we're able to go and get a guy like him right now, but we can't get some of these other free agents that are getting cut recently or that are unrestricted free agents heading into this 2024 season, all of that type of stuff. Also, this shouldn't affect our comp pick calculations. For any of y'all that may have been worrying about that, I know there's some people that don't really care, but for those of y'all that do, I try to think about every little thing and how every single part of the organization is impacted from any moves that we make. And thinking about comp picks, I don't think this would interrupt anything. Like, this signing isn't major enough, especially just monetary wise, just the numbers on it, to basically potentially cancel out like a Cameron Curl leaving in free agency, or a Curtis Samuel, or a Kendall Fuller. If either of those guys, or maybe all three of them, who knows, end up leaving and getting pretty big contracts elsewhere with another team in free agency, then I don't think this Zach Ertz signing would cancel out any of those. This is a very cheap signing. And also, shouts out to Al Galdi for pointing this out. The real value for NFL teams in free agency is the short-term, low money, low risk, potentially high reward contract. The Commanders signing Zach Ertz to a one-year deal worth up to $5 million is exactly that kind of contract. These are the type of smart contracts that I'm expecting the Commanders to take advantage of right now, especially now that we're starting to become a free agency destination. People like Zach Ertz probably wouldn't have been willing to even come to the Burgundy and Gold on a cheap $5 million one-year deal before we brought in this new regime with Josh Harris, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, and all of these guys. If this were last year, I'm pretty sure even if Ron Rivera and company wanted him, he wouldn't have signed for like a one-year $5 million deal. So this is like a slight clue, like a slight, okay, this is the first step to show that, hey man, the Commanders will probably be a big-time free agency destination. First of all, we have the most cap space in the NFL, so let's go ahead and get that out the way. If we want to go toe-to-toe, band for band with anybody on trying to sign a player and trying to outbid them, we can if we really want to. I doubt we will, but we can. We're loaded if we want to spend that ammo. We having big money-uns over here, man. Really have emotion if we really want to spend it. But again, my main point is that Zach Ertz coming here on a cheap deal like this shows that we may potentially be a free agency destination for other players that we may want at other position groups and things like that. Because again, the previous regime would not have been able to pull off a signing like this. These are different lower tier signings than what Ron Rivera and those guys were getting. Now, granted, some of those have worked out. Like J.D. McKissic worked out for a little bit. Logan Thomas worked out for a little bit. Charles Leno was pretty decent at times. And all of those bargain bin shopping things that Ron Rivera was doing, that's different than what we're doing right now and what I'm expecting the Commanders to do going forward with Adam Peters, where, yeah, maybe we're going to sign some guys to cheaper contracts, but these are guys that Ron Rivera wouldn't have been able to get at the same price. Ron Rivera would have had to have paid more money for these guys. So these are even more valuable as far as these signings go, potentially, that we're going to get. So I know a lot of y'all see like a one-year $5 million deal and just assume, hey, he's not going to have that much of an impact because he's only signing for $5 million. If he was really that good, he would demand more money. But I'm telling you, don't be quick to judge that too soon. We're probably going to get guys cheaper than what the previous regime were going to get those same exact guys for if they wanted them. Just to go ahead and give you the heads up, because I think this is the place to be right now. New regime. We have so many proven coaches that have developed players very well. And also, we have coaches here that, I mean, I've done full video breakdowns on it, but we have several coaches in this coaching staff, both offense and defense and special teams, that have gotten the best seasons out of guys and have gotten those guys paid in the open market when they eventually left to go to another team or to even re-sign with the current team that they were on. So I'm pretty sure free agents around the NFL noticed that, like, hey man, they have a DB's coach that got the best out of this guy and got that guy paid. They have a linebackers coach that has done the same thing. They have a wide receivers coach or a quarterbacks coach and things like that. So I'm pretty sure, for reasons I've already stated in several other videos, that, and for what I'm explaining now, that we will have a chance to get free agents that, first of all, the previous regime wouldn't have been able to even attract here at one point in time. They wouldn't have even wanted to come here no matter what price you basically offered them, unless you offered them some catastrophic, cataclysmic cap killing type of money, like some just unheard of triple what anybody else was potentially offering them. But also the same free agents that would have been willing to come here even with the previous regime will probably demand less money from us because they kind of see the vision. Again, like I've talked about several times before, even when Ron Rivera and company got certain free agents, more so Dan Snyder's fault than anybody else's, but Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew deserve a share of the blame as well, that even if we would get a free agent that we wanted, they would come in and tax us a little extra on top just to be like, man, I already know I'm going to a situation where we're not necessarily expected to win and things like that. And if I'm going to waste good years of my life playing for y'all, I'm gonna need a little bit more money as compensation just for that alone. And I don't think free agents in this upcoming free agency period are gonna view this organization like that necessarily. Maybe we're not gonna be immediate Super Bowl contenders within this first year, but I'm pretty sure they can see the vision, or at the very least Adam Peters and company can sell them on the vision that, hey, come here now, prove yourself, we'll be willing to pay you big money if you earn it, and then you'll potentially be a part of a new and upcoming Super Bowl contender. And also, like I've already talked about in another video, about how the Commanders will potentially plan on actually being very active in free agency. With all of the starters that we're losing, especially from this 2023 season, for one reason or another leaving, or we just don't want to keep them, whatever, we don't re-sign them. But that does not automatically equate into us making big splash signings. Like, it's more of like a sign a lot of people to smart money, like we just did with Zach Ertz, rather than like a couple of people, one or two people, to big headliner type of signings where they're eating up a lot of the cap space by themselves, just individually. And I'm not saying that we will for sure not do that. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up making like one or two big signings, but I'm just telling you, don't hold your breath. We're going to spend a lot of money potentially in free agency, but it's going to more so be split up amongst a lot of different players rather than spending a lot of money on like one or two guys. Just to keep you updated on what Adam Peters has said personally to like Grant Paulson on his radio show / podcast and things like that, just to remind y'all. And also, of course, Zach Ertz, let's just go ahead and get to him. Let's talk about him. That's the point of this video for the most part. He, of course, goes back to his days with Cliff Kingsbury back in 2021, 2022. And remember, Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach of the Cardinals for those years, and they traded for Zach Ertz and actually found a way to feature him in the offense. A lot of people talked about, like, why would Cliff Kingsbury in his air raid system that doesn't use tight ends trade for a Zach Ertz? And then he actually showcased them and utilized them a lot. He had a very high usage rate under Cliff Kingsbury and was definitely featured. So I would expect Cliff Kingsbury to have a similar plan for him here if he ends up actually winning a starting job and things like that. Don't assume that Zach Ertz will start. We'll see. We're going to have some heavy competition in training camp. We're going to talk about that soon. But at least there's one very strong connection here as to why Zach Ertz is willing to come here on a cheap 1 year, $5 million deal. Also, shouts out to Resh Manuel, because you know he comes in clutch with the connections. Zach Ertz has ties to quarterbacks coach from the Commanders, Tavita Pritchard, from their time together at Stanford. Really interesting. Also, aside from the aforementioned Cliff Kingsbury and Tavita Pritchard connections, it is also noted that the Commanders' assistant GM Lance Newmark was instrumental in signing Zach Ertz to the Lions earlier this year. While even though Zach Ertz didn't actually play a game, Lance Newmark clearly had done his research on Zach Ertz. So again, shouts out to Resh Manuel for those connections as well. You know he's the guy for that if you're interested in any of those type of did you know type of facts, things like that. Background information. Shouts out to my boy Resh Manuel on Twitter. And then also, moving on with Zach Ertz, with this type of cheap money, this is definitely a low risk, high reward signing, with him being like a potential safety blanket for a young quarterback. But of course, the key for him is to stay healthy. Zach Ertz, please stay healthy. That's the main concern. When healthy, he's a really good tight end, a Pro Bowl level tight end. But the problem is, can he stay healthy? Now, of course, his best years were his Pro Bowl years in Philadelphia with the Eagles, where he was a 3-time Pro Bowler, and somebody that, again, like I already talked about, the burgundy and gold could never figure out how to cover. We had nothing for him. He was running our players over and everything for touchdowns. It was crazy. But even beyond that, when Zach Ertz was healthy in Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury and his offense, he was very productive. 21 games, 103 catches, 980 yards, and 7 touchdowns in like a season and a half. But then And shouts out to Ryan Fowler for this point here. Completely agree with this tweet. Really like the Zach Ertz ad in Washington where the tight ends room technically lacks pop and it definitely lacks experience. He won't be a dynamic flex piece, but he can be an inline and flexed while offering a friendly face on high leverage downs with a keen understanding to find soft spots in the defense, a young quarterback's best friend. But most importantly, he averaged nearly 7 targets a game under Cliff Kingsbury back in 2021 and 2022. And then his 2021 season was the best season that he had with Cliff Kingsbury. He had 112 targets, 74 catches, 763 yards, and 5 touchdowns on top of having 40 first downs in that 2021 season with Cliff Kingsbury. But then his most recent season with Cliff Kingsbury didn't necessarily go as well. He had 46 catches on 68 targets in the first 9 games of the 2022 season before he tore his ACL. So Cliff Kingsbury was on pace to have him getting a lot of targets and receptions and yards and things like that again, but then he just ended up tearing his ACL. But the positive side of that is that Cliff Kingsbury knows how to get Zach Ertz involved and keeps him busy, keeps him very productive, and to potentially, if he still has that something left in his tank, that Arizona Cardinals version of himself, he doesn't even have to necessarily be the Eagles version of himself, is what I'm saying. If he can give us 2021, 2022 before tearing his ACL version of himself, Cliff Kingsbury can get a lot out of him, and we could have potentially solved the tight end position right there. Now, we're going to talk about why I don't feel like we've officially solved it, why we should still probably get a guy at minimum in free agency and or the draft. But before we get there, I also wanted you to keep in mind that not only does he have an injury history, but he's also older than Logan Thomas. So you can tell this is more of just like a fit thing, because we cut Logan Thomas due to injury concerns and age. And then we bring in Zach Ertz, who's even older and has similar injury concerns. So it's just more so Cliff Kingsbury prefers Zach Ertz over a Logan Thomas because he has no attachment to Logan Thomas. And he's seen what he can get out of Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz knows how exactly he wants his practices run, how he wants certain plays run. He's already ahead of Terry McLaurin and guys like that as far as knowing the Cliff Kingsbury air raid system and playbook, because he's literally been with Cliff Kingsbury when, again, Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach for the Cardinals. So Zach Ertz comes in and is already one of the most familiar and ready to go guys on our offense, just simply because of the old connection to the air raid system under Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. So again, just to go back to my main point, Zach Ertz, we talked about Logan Thomas being older and injury prone. Zach Ertz is literally older than Logan Thomas. Zach Ertz is 33, Logan Thomas is 32. And just to let you know, Zach Ertz has played 11 seasons in the NFL. So this is definitely a guy that I don't think he's necessarily like in a super decline, especially if he's fully healthy. If he fully recovers from that torn ACL, I do expect him to actually outplay his $5 million that he's getting paid here right now. I definitely do. But he's definitely not in his prime anymore is my point. But I'm also assuming that this contract is probably very incentive based. Like, probably not even a full $5 million cap hit, because I believe only a portion of it is probably guaranteed. We got to wait to see what the actual full contract details are. But I think when you hear 1 year, $5 million deal, I'm assuming that he's not eating up $5 million worth of cap space in 2024. I'm assuming it's probably like $3 million or something like that. Maybe even less than that. We'll see. I'm pretty sure, again, with his age and his injury concerns, this is very incentive based. That's why I wanted to bring up that whole Logan Thomas part and Zach Ertz age and injuries, because I don't think this is going to cost us $5 million against cap, just to let you know. So we may still lead the NFL in cap space because the Patriots are close behind us in second place, but I don't think this is going to cost us a full $5 million against the cap space specifically. Also, with signing Zach Ertz, especially with his age and injury history, yeah, it's nice and all to get a guy like Zach Ertz, and he potentially raises the floor and confidence that I have in this tight end room to produce at least a little bit in this upcoming season. But that does not stop you from taking potentially a Jatavion Sanders from Texas, or a Cade Stover from Ohio State, or a Ben Sinnott from Kansas State, or a Theo Johnson from Penn State, like I had us taking in my trade back mock draft scenario that I came out with this morning, to pair with the Zach Ertz. You draft those guys in addition to the signing of a Zach Ertz. It's not either or, man. And maybe you even consider signing another tight end in free agency as well. This Zach Ertz signing isn't major enough, in my opinion. At the very least, dependable enough with his injury history and his inconsistent availability. I don't think this signing of Zach Ertz stops you from potentially signing another guy in free agency, maybe even like a Noah Fant if you want to. If this organization loves Noah Fant, signing Zach Ertz does not stop you from pursuing Noah Fant. But then again, maybe this organization, Adam Peters and these guys don't even want a Noah Fant at all. But who knows? But my main point is signing Zach Ertz does not stop you from addressing tight end further going into free agency and the draft especially. Also, even when Zach Ertz was at his best and fully healthy and available, even when he was his Pro Bowl self, I wouldn't necessarily consider him like a super yak guy. Necessarily, he might run somebody over, but he wasn't about to just juke people out of their socks and get like an additional 20 yards on a catch. He gonna be there for you when you need him on like a 7-yard first down catch on 3rd and 5. But it would be nice to have a tight end that you can give the ball and then gives you a little bit more out of it, but beyond them where he just caught the ball specifically and gets tackled immediately. So even Zach Ertz, say supreme best case scenario, he ends up turning into his Pro Bowl self from the Eagles that was killing us. Even then, I would still want to add another tight end to this group. Just off of the fact that not even just hating on Zach Ertz, but what do we have proven wise in this tight end room currently right now? But to go back to my point, JP Finley tweeted out a couple of texts about Zach Ertz from NFL Insiders. The nice version, he's basically a route runner that's basically the extension of the run game for 78 yards. But the not so nice version is no yak Zach. And that's what he is. He's not a big yak guy. He may run people over. And again, he's done that to us. I believe he ran over DJ Swearinger for a touchdown at one point. But he's not expected to be a yak guy. And we still need that type of tight end on this team. But also remember, when I say this does not stop them from signing a top free agency tight end, when I say top, that is very relative, at least to me right now, because this is not a good free agency tight end class right here, in my opinion. Even if Dalton Schultz was still available, and he's not, I believe he re-signed with the Texans. So the guys that are available will probably be overvalued just due to lack of supply and increased demand. A lot of teams need tight ends, but there aren't a lot of really good tight ends available in this free agency class. So I doubt that Adam Peters overpays for anybody, especially like a free agent tight end, especially immediately before we even know, okay, this roster is actually this good. We've had the chance to coach them and play some regular season games with them to actually truly know what our biggest weaknesses are. I doubt he overreacts and tries to outbid somebody for, say, like a Noah Fant that I really want in free agency. But then again, like I just said, with supply and demand being completely uneven right now, completely on different sides of the spectrum, whoever you end up potentially trying to get in free agency, you'll probably have to overpay for them because there's going to be a market out there for them. There's going to be other teams trying to get them, and you're going to have to outbid that team. And then now we're paying more money to a guy that we should be, just simply because this free agency class is very scarce when it comes to tight ends, and several positions actually, but especially tight end. So for that reason, basically my conclusion is we should definitely draft a tight end within like the 2nd or 3rd round for sure. I doubt we're going to sign another guy, at least anybody notable. It'll probably be some random cheap guy that we can expect to produce even less trustworthy than like a Zach Ertz with his injury history and age. Probably be like a cheap veteran minimum type of guy, like a camp body, but I doubt we go and get like a Noah Fant or like a Gerald Everett or anything like that. So I still feel like, even though I love Armani Rogers' talent and potential, I love John Bates as a blocker, and I think Cole Turner was drastically underutilized last year by Eric Bieniemy. He was even more underutilized under Eric Bieniemy than Scott Turner, and I thought he was underutilized in Scott Turner's offense, and Eric Bieniemy came in, and the man wasn't even active some game days. He was like a healthy scratch. Like, I'm like, what's going on? So I love the talent potential ceiling in our tight end room, but we don't have much of a floor. So can we please go get an additional floor and ceiling in the draft, please and thank you. And shouts out to the Commander's Realm because he sums it up very well. I completely agree. Ertz being picked up as a veteran security blanket for potentially a rookie quarterback is a smart move. Familiar with Cliff's scheme, played with a lot of young quarterbacks throughout his career. I think that's very noteworthy. Zach Ertz does have a lot of experience playing with young quarterbacks, so it's like business as usual for him with Kyler Murray when he was young still, Carson Wentz while young, and then potentially coming here, whether it's Sam Howell or quarterback that we take at number 2 overall, young quarterback again. So it's not like this is a tight end that doesn't have experience adjusting himself and making himself available for younger quarterbacks, knowing from their point of view, young quarterbacks tend to struggle with these things, so I'm gonna help them out that way. I'm gonna contort my body. I'm gonna show myself to the quarterback to let him know I'm open, to make things easier for him. I'm gonna do things for those younger quarterbacks that I may not necessarily need to do or know to do with the veteran quarterback. So that's another reason why this signing is kind of secretly a great signing, because I think that specifically his experience as a tight end to be the safety blanket for specifically inexperienced quarterbacks is going to pay dividends for us, because I think if any tight ends are already naturally QB friendly, but I think Zach Ertz is the friendlier version of that group of QB friendly guys that are already naturally that way. So I'm very excited about that. And then he goes on to say, which I agree, I still think they draft tight end pretty high in the draft. I completely agree. I think second or third round, you still end up taking a guy like the guys I've already said before, maybe even like a Jatavion Sanders. Brock Bowers is completely out of the range, and I would love to get him as a Georgia Bulldog, but I already know that's not possible. So like I said, Jatavion Sanders, Ben Sinnott, Cade Stover, Theo Johnson, one of those guys. And then lastly, what grade would you give this Zach Ertz signing? Of course, I want y'all to tell me in the comment section, but me personally, I'll give it like a B, with the potential of it being an A+. If he turns back to his 2021 Arizona Cardinals self on a $5 million deal, that's, in again, for reasons I've already explained, it may not even be $5 million against the cap hit. It may be even less than that. That's an A+ signing right there. If he goes out there and plays at basically like a Pro Bowl level, especially for a young quarterback, whether it's Sam Howell or we draft a guy like Jayden Daniels or Drake May, that's an A+ signing. But right now, to play it safe, I think it's like a B. Because again, you also have to factor in the injury concerns, the injury history, and the fact that he's 33 years old and he's coming off of a torn ACL. So who knows if he'll even be his Arizona Cardinals self, let alone the Philadelphia Eagles 3-time Pro Bowler self. So we'll see. But let me know how y'all feel about it. Of course, I really appreciate that. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Again, like I said, not only how do you feel about this signing specifically, but I also want a grade for everybody that leaves a comment. Exactly what grade would you give this signing, and explain why as well. And of course, man, stay tuned for all of the content. Please stiff arm that like button. Please leave a like on the way out, man. Before you leave this video, just go ahead and click that like button. It's free for y'all and it means the world to me. So man, please leave a like on the way out. Also, man, make sure you stiff arm that subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Again, your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. I will be keeping y'all updated on everything, and of course we're still working on more content like free agency wish list, top needs on the team, everything, film sessions for the draft prospects, more mock drafts on the way. Just did a mock draft earlier this morning with a trade back scenario where we came away with a massive haul from trading back with the Falcons, so tune into that. Stay tuned for more content. I have so many great video ideas that I'm working on, especially free agency based as well, so stay tuned for all of that. I'm gonna keep y'all updated on everything that happens before free agency and everything that happens during and after free agency as well. Catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.